Good morning, everyone. We're just going to check into the Zoom webinar and make sure that we can be heard. Matthew, can you hear us?
Matthew is not here, but Kim can hear you.
Okay. Oh, great. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
So we can hear you and you can hear us. So, Chair Crandall, we are ready to begin when you are.
I'm ready as soon as it's 9. All right, looks like we're ready. Yes. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our November 1st regular Board of Supervisors meeting. As customary, we'll start with a moment of silence. Is there a moment of silence this morning? Vice Chair Pyska?
I want the moment of silence today to be for the victims of bullying. We're seeing a lot of bullying happening in our schools in Lake County, and words really matter and behaviors matter, and the victims of this bullying are really suffering.
All right. Chief Ciancio, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Item 4, consideration of extra items not appearing on the posted agenda. Do we have any today? Don't see any, so we will move on to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda items are mostly non-controversial. However, if needed, we can pull from the agenda, anyone from the Board of Supervisors or from the public. Is there anyone that has an item they'd like to pull? Okay, not seeing any. Does anyone see any on Zoom? I'm not on the panel yet.
I'm not on either. Apologize.
Do you have something to pull?
Yeah, I'm expected to speak for...
Oh, no, sir, that's a different item. That's public input. This is the consent agenda. And Donna, did she?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, did you want to pull something from the consent agenda?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to chime in yet.
Okay, you want to come in during public input, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with that, close public input, as I'm not seeing any other folks wanting to pull.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted, 5.1 through 5.4.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, 9:02. So we're a little ahead. What can we go to? Do you see any fast ones we can take care of in 3 minutes?
7.7.
7.7, consideration of amendment to the County of Lake COVID-19 Public Health Emergency Worksite Protocol. And this is for Pam Samick, Human Resources Director, and I don't know if she's available, but she is. All right.
Here she comes.
Oh, there she is. Thank you, Pam. Does not matter. It's your choice.
Good morning. My name is Pam Samick, HR Director. This morning, I'd like to present the changes to the COVID protocol. There are 5 changes, one that is significant. The update to close contact has been changed from 6 feet in a 15 minutes in a 24-hour period, to sharing the same airspace in 400,000 cubic feet, which is significant. So anybody sharing the same airspace in approximately 44,000 square feet is now considered close contact. They also added close contact for large indoor spaces, which is over the 400,000 cubic feet, which remains the same, which is 6 feet for 15 minutes. California Department of Public Health also added masking guidelines to include the CDC COVID community levels for high-risk areas, which include homeless shelters, emergency shelters, cooling and heating centers, and correctional facilities. Currently, we are at low, so when it goes into a medium and high rate of COVID, then those workplaces would require masking. I also updated the guidelines for close contact, which means anybody that is in close contact now for 10 days, they must mask after that close contact. So that's going to be significant to all of our departments, because anybody that has a positive COVID close contact, now an entire floor will be masking for the 10 days following that close contact. They must test after 3 to 5 days, and then follow for any symptoms in that 10-day period. If they develop symptoms, test and isolate till they get the results of the test. We removed the guidance for vaccinated, boosted healthcare personnel no longer have to be excluded based on close contact if they are fully vaccinated and boosted. And we removed age 65 from the guidance of high risk, because the CDC updated their guidance to just say anybody that has serious health issues. There's no longer an age parameter there. And that's the changes for this protocol currently. Do you have any questions?
Not seeing any by the board. Is there anybody from the public that has a comment about this item? And I will bring it back to the board for, is it action? Supervisor Sabatier.
Yeah, we're looking to approve the amendment. It's the CDC. We're following the rules of the CDC and CDPH, but this complicates things at a level that is, I just don't understand where they're coming up with these things. We don't work in wide open warehouses. It feels like that's what they're aiming for, rather than office space where there's specific people in specific offices, departments in different areas. But here it's.
Well, if the doors open into that office space, you're now in the same airspace.
I know, that's
So
why it
very
it creates complexities, but moving forward, but not happy with it.
Me either.
Move to approve the amendment to the County Lake COVID-19 Public Health Emergency Worksite Protocol and direct staff to continue to return with future amendments to the protocol on an as-needed basis.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Pam. All right. We will now go to our timed item, 6.1, public input. During public input, any constituent from the public or citizen from the public can come up and speak on behalf of an item that is not on the listed agenda. Just note that you'll have 3 minutes to speak, state your name for the record, and we will either have someone address or touch base with you after the meeting if it's something that we can associate you with the director, or your district supervisor will assist you and will guide you to that direction. So I see here we have Andre Woozy. Thank you. Yep.
So good morning, supervisors. My name is Andre Geziek. Hard to pronounce.
Sorry.
I requested to speak because I think here's an item where you can make a big difference. I'm the new owner of the Mount St. Helena Vineyard in Middletown. That's kind of an old property that's been farmed for 40 plus years. And I employ about 50 people at one time or another, my vineyard manager says. And shortly before, after the purchase, I came here and met with planning and also the assessor's office. And I was advised to apply to obtain an ag preserve for the land. So I did all the research. I paid the $2,600 fee, and I prepared the whole dossier June 20. Okay, so here is my challenge. I'm having pretty big losses this year. The payment for my crop doesn't really cover all I pay to farm the place. And on top of it, I just got hit with a property tax bill of $62,000. It's a lot of money. And it actually should be reassessed according to my bank and me, because I paid less for the land than the previous owner. That's actually not the reason I wanted to buy, it's just a fact, okay? And I do, after it's reassessed, I will save a little bit, which would be good. However, there's 6,000 people apparently waiting for reassessment, so who knows when it's going to happen. So I personally believe the main reason the previous owner sold and actually moved to Florida, that's where he is now, is the excessive property tax. It's extremely hard to turn a profit in agriculture if you're burdened with this. So anyways, I'm not new to business, and I'll do what it takes to survive and stay in business. And that means come January 1st, I won't be able to have all these 50 people on the payroll unless I have some relief on that situation. I was going to say I researched the Williamson Act of 1965. I believe it was created just for this very reason, and is very beneficial. And I feel the county may think that holding on to this tax is a benefit for the county coffers. I suppose it is, but it's very short term because it's destroying jobs, as unfortunately you can observe. It's also destroying value, and I think it's detrimental to the agricultural economy. And on the value, so my property lost some value, not a ton, but a little bit between 2016 and 2022, while every other house in Middletown doubled the value. And that should tell you that there's a problem there, and that's because of that burden, okay? So I really hope you will hear my plea and give this actual consideration so I can keep these 50 people also employed. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. And I'm just putting on a mask because I keep coughing, so. All right. Next, it looks like, is there anyone else in the public here in the chambers that would like to speak on behalf of anything? Not seeing anything. I see Donna Mikewitz, if you'd like to unmute.
Good morning. Donna Makowitz, representing the Clear Lake Oaks Keys Property Owners Association of close to 900 homeowners, with a quick update on happenings in District 3. Welcome, Supervisor Green, and thank you to the board and Chairman Crandall for the support offered to our community as we continue to improve the water quality of Clear Lake. Living in the Oaks Arm has many challenges. Low water levels increased with the drought, contaminants due to close proximity of EPA's Sulphur Bank Mine Superfund site, wind direction, runoff of Schindler Creek High Valley watershed that's completely closed off the tributary of Schindler Creek, where historically hitch spawned and provided an important food source for the Elam Pomo, and just as urgent, tackling the invasive water primrose. The primrose has grown so dense it has clogged water intakes, restricted boat access and navigation, prevented recreational access, trapped fishing lures in line, and created stagnant water conditions that promote West Nile mosquito habitat. West Nile virus was detected and treated in our channels in July. In recent weeks, the POA has been spraying herbicide with county approval and support through the 8 miles of channels to eliminate West Nile habitat and improve the health and well-being of the community. We've spent over $50,000 this past 2 weeks spraying county property also where approved with our Keys funds, and are seeking grants for not only future herbicide control, but reclaiming Schindler Creek's flow once again. We're beginning to see the die-off and will follow up in the spring with another round of waterwork industry spraying. The Clear Lake Keys POA is committed to making Lake County the best it can be, and hopefully we will see recreational activities and cleaner water by summer. And another update, the Nylander Park Community Free Lending Library, excuse me, that was stolen by a homeless person, and we captured that on video, has been replaced but vandalized again this week. I mention this to draw attention to the homeless people that live in and around the county's Clark Island and Nylanders Park. It is not a safe place to visit between sundown and sunrise. Visitors, especially children's safety, needs to be addressed. There was talk the adjoining county building might become a District 3 office site or base for roadmap task force officers, and the Keys community would fully support this and offer volunteers to help staff the office when needed. Having a public officials visible in the area might help with the dispersal of drug users and homelessness at the county's parks and at the boat ramp. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has any public input at this time? All right. Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for our next item on the agenda, which is 6.2, presentation of proclamation commending Lori Garzoli, supervising child support officer. And let's see, I have the proclamation right here. Do we read it, or we allow her to read it? Huh? Go for it? Okay, well, I'll read. Well, does anyone else want to read it? I don't mind. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Don't threaten us.
All right, well, welcome, and this is a great time to be able to acknowledge you on this. So I will go ahead and read this proclamation commending Lori Garzoli. Am I pronouncing it right? Yes. Supervising Child Support Officer. Whereas Lori Garzoli has been a valued and respected employee of the County of Lake since August 23, 1999. And whereas Lori Garzoli began her career with Lake County Superior Court as a court clerk. And whereas Lori Garzoli began working for Child Support Services on January 7, 2002 as a Child Support Officer. And whereas Lori Garzoli promoted to Supervising Child Support Officer on May 11, 2009. And whereas Lori Garzoli has been described as knowledgeable, giving, kind, and a hard worker. And whereas Lori Garzoli has done an outstanding job as the department's customer service trainer. And whereas Lori Garzoli has dedicated her service career to the public and is an excellent example of what public servant is. And whereas Lori Garzoli will deeply be missed by her coworkers in child support. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Lake does hereby commend Lori Garzoli for her 23 years of service to the County of Lake and to the citizens of Lake County, and extends our appreciation for her dedication and hard work, and wish her the best in the future. She will be greatly missed, passed and adopted this first day of November 2022.
I just want to say it's really going to be hard having Lori leave. She is taking 20 years of child support experience with her, and the number of retirees that have happened and are going to be happening, it's making a big dent in the department, but her experience going out the door will really, truly be missed.
Totally understandable.
Oh, that was great.
Thank you, Lori, for all of your years of service.
And congratulations.
Yep, we are at our 9:15. 6.3, a consideration of adding a fire district seat to the cannabis task force, and B, consideration of joining the newly created fire marshal forum and directing staff to attend. This is downloading. Supervisor Sabatier?
Thank you very much. So I've had multiple conversations over the years with our fire district, more specifically with Chief Cepeda, since he's in the area that I serve. And there's always been the what can we do next, how can we do things better, and trying to enhance the conversation, mainly for fire safety when it comes to the development of projects or anything that is being created in our community. As we know, fire hazards are increasing. Fires are becoming a little bit more unexpected and erratic, and so the more we can control and maintain the type of development that is created and how it's created, the better off we will be. And so we had another conversation the other day, and he took part as a public member in the Cannabis Task Force, and he brought a request to me saying, you know, I think that the fire district should have a seat, that we should be part of the conversation, and what are your thoughts? And the reason I bring this today is because I think that we should look at having a fire district on any type of conversation that we're having when it comes to development and what are the development norms that we're going to practice and how we move forward. And to me, this is one of the places that we can go ahead and start and make sure that they are not just ancillary to the conversation, but actually truly a partner and part of the conversation with a vote on how we move forward. Right now, there are 7 seats. There's a Farm Bureau seat, a tribal seat, Ag Commissioner, Cannabis Alliance seat. I believe it's Cannabis Industry seat. I could be incorrect on that one. And then 2 public members. So that's 7 seats. This would create an 8th seat, which does provide a even scenario for the committee. However, this is a task force that I think that having an even number does not give it too much of a potential issue when it comes to voting. I think that they're trying to hammer things down where the majority will always be in agreement with the direction that it goes. So this is part A. I agree with bringing this to the board and having the conversation, and I know that we do have Chief Ciancio here in case that he wanted to provide his own input, but I think this is again, in the future creation of new development norms, I think that I would like to see a fire district seat always being available to be part of the conversation.
All right. Any questions from the board?
Just more comment than a question, and thank you, Supervisor Sabatier, for that introduction, and I did speak briefly with you over the weekend. Not opposed to having, you're right, if fire representation on any panel or creating county policy is a good thing. I think if the gist of this is the concern over the 4290 standards and how we get access to these far-flung cannabis farms, and as you mentioned, when the task force was created several months ago, there is opportunity sometimes to take a look at policies that affect cannabis, but also have a broader discussion about how these same policies affect agriculture generally. And I do believe that if the primary concern is on the 4290, it's not on the agenda, and apparently it hasn't been a thing active, but I would note that when we do our committee assignments, there is a creature called an Ag Advisory Committee, which I'm proposed to be on there with Supervisor Peiska, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to spin up that committee, whether it's on this particular issue or other issues facing agriculture generally. So if we want to plow ahead and do this representation, I am a little concerned that it gets to an even number of seats. If there is going to be a recommendation, probably you need that odd number. So it's more of a question at this point, whether you would be open to tweaking that and saying, yeah, absolutely, we want fire district representation, and if they want to get on the cannabis task force, okay. But as to the issue of the 4290 stuff, I'm wondering if we could go in a different direction on that, and whether the Ag Advisory Committee would be the place to do that, and whether we could get fire district input on that as well. So it's more of a process question than anything else, and I'll kind of leave it at that right now.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, I think it's larger than the 4290 conversation, by far. So I agree that they should have this seat, and they should have a seat going forward on developmental, or committees for development work. I think that's wholly appropriate.
Yeah, and I, just before Supervisor Sabatier, I do think it's a good idea to have the fire board there. I speak with Chief Ciancio quite frequently, and I know sometimes there's a breakdown of communication or whatever the case may be, so I know this is a good thing. I was thinking too, in line with the 8 seats and, you know, always for voting purposes and whatnot, one thing they do on the Blue Ribbon Committee is they always strive for a consensus, but there still will be like 2 or 3 that dissent because they don't agree vehemently. They just note that they don't agree, you know, so I don't know if that's an option or if there's any bylaws of this or whatever the case may be, or if there's but I mean, maybe we can add that to the deal to just let them know. Strive for consensus, and yeah, so I don't know, just an idea.
Yeah.
Supervisor Sabatier, then Vice Chair.
My assumption, and I'm looking at Director Turner here, is that Director Turner is striving exactly for that, rather than bringing us something that was controversial within the ranks of the task force, bringing something that has a little bit more overall support than not. So thank you for coming up.
Mireille Turner, Community Development Director. Indeed, the goal of this advisory committee is to gain consensus. If the board would like more detailed recommendations, sometimes we've already had a couple instances where the recommendations haven't been supported by a vote, and so we've set those aside. If the board would like additionally detailed sort of minutes on who voted yes and who voted no and maybe why, we'd be happy to provide that for the board. The fire district's personnel representatives have attended the last couple of meetings, and their input is very valuable to the group. So,
Thank you. And then to add, there's, as Vice Chair Pyska mentioned, it's more than just 4290. There's the pesticides are a concern for a fire district. The fire mitigation fees are a concern for the districts. What actually fits within an ag exempt? Is that greenhouses? Is that hoop houses? Is that dry sheds? So the conversation becomes a lot larger than just that. And I would suggest that whoever ends up being, which I would assume is probably going to remain as is for the Ag Advisory Board, you have the ability to bring those topics up and have those conversations at the Ag Advisory Board yourselves. So I don't think it prohibits or creates that right here. And I'm done.
Vice Chair?
Yes, I had spoken with Director Turner about her process for consensus, and I don't have a problem with the 8-seat committee, task force, ad hoc, whatever it is.
Yeah, and again, no problem with supporting this today, but I did want to highlight Ag Advisory, I think, is a place where some of these issues do belong, including temporary structures and what have you. Yeah, the focus is probably driven by cannabis, but if we're going to be making ag-related rules, I do like the idea of spinning up the Ag Advisory Committee and bringing some of these same policy questions before them, because we're going to get a slightly different composition of that committee, and I think that basically 2 lanes of input are going to be doubly valuable when we are talking about development. And so things like nuisance orders and what have you. So definitely I'll be supporting this today, but I do want to look for staff and again, I'm on week 1 of the job, so it isn't like I've even had a chance to talk with Catherine or anybody about this, but I would like to see Ag Advisory get fired up next year.
The Ag Advisory Committee is only committed to meet twice a year, and it's, we can talk about that when we get to committees, but it doesn't meet as frequently as this group, and it has a different scope. So we can talk more about that later.
Thank you.
All right, we'll open it up to the public, and it looks like Chief, come up to the mic and.
Good morning, Mike Ciancio, Fire Chief with North Shore Fire District. I hear your concerns, Supervisor, and I think for the fire districts, it's about communication, transparency, and all having the same message. All the fire districts are a little bit different, and their ordinances and regulations are a little bit different depending on things, but we would like to have the same message out there. And we wanted to get in front of it and become part of the task force so that it can be considered when we're developing the ordinance. Instead of us going down the line and trying to backtrack how we do things. And that's what we've done to this point.
Right.
So we're trying to get in front of it and be part of the process instead of being part of the problem later on. So that's really why we are asking to be on the task force. And I'm not sure how we will do it. You know, we work pretty well together. So if I can't go to the meeting, G. Cepeda or someone will. So we'll make sure someone's always there.
So, yeah, that's a good point, is that it won't be assigned to an individual chief. It will be a seat for the chiefs to fill at each meeting.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it as a Fire Chiefs Association seat, and that way they delegate who shows up.
All right. And it looks like we have, is there anyone else in the chambers before I go to Zoom? All right. Phone number 707-281-6205. If you can unmute, we'll start your 3 minutes.
Good morning. This is Bart Levinson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. The Valley Fire was started by the unpermitted use of electrical wiring from a residence to a hot tub. And out of that, 1,300 homes are lost, lives are lost. Fires have ensued every year since, and 65+% of our county has already burned. We need the fire chiefs and the fire department to set the standards for what is safe enough for everyone, because now the commercial cannabis grows are also in residential neighborhoods, not just in isolated commercial areas. And evacuation routes are going to have to be shared by residences, the commercial grows, and the first responders alike. It's essential that the first responders be able to input the standards that are needed, like does there need to be a designated water tank on each grow site that's already outfitted for fire hoses, that's accessible by a fire truck? Is that the sort of thing? Are there smoke detectors and carbon monoxide monitors needed in areas where generators are used for employee safety? Smoke taint is a very real risk to the wine industry and to the cannabis industry. It behooves all of us to do whatever we can to not start a fire. And we need to hear from the fire chiefs what we need to do to not start a fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, it looks like we have Aaron McCarrick. Aaron, if you could unmute, state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Hello, Erin McCarrick, Clear Lake. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. Thanks for this consideration. I definitely support space for the fire district on the task force committee, or the task force. I'm a licensed operator in the city of Clear Lake, and we have to work closely with the fire department. They actually ended up creating kind of a guidance for people looking to get licensed on what to do in terms of layout, in terms of fire safety, and we have to get fully signed off by the fire department before we're allowed to do anything or operate. So definitely understand the need for fire district input. I would, however, like to advocate for a 9th seat, especially because one of the things that fire departments are concerned about is manufacturing and processing, maybe dispensaries, distribution, somebody other than cultivation. Jen Smith is a cultivation representative on the task force, and she gives a wide depth of knowledge in that. Nara Dabaka is the other industry rep. She's not a licensed cannabis holder. So I think it would be beneficial to add a seat that represents the kind of other elements of the cannabis world in that. And also just in general, because, you know, we are creating a cannabis ordinance. So I think making sure that there's still decent cannabis representation is important. It'd be like doing a fire ordinance and having 2 out of 8 people be fire department people. So just a consideration for that. I certainly appreciate the time and this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Jennifer Smith. If you'd like to unmute and state your name for the record, we'll start your 3 minutes.
Good morning, it's Jennifer Smith. I'm definitely going to be echoing a lot of what Aaron just said. And just know that this is a tough one for me. My business partner and my brother are both firefighters. I'm very sensitive to the safety concerns of our firefighters, and as well as making sure that my property is protected and prepared for fire. I have one concern in that, is this really the best use of time? And when the task force was originally going to be created, there was 15 plus positions recommended. At that time, we decided that county representatives would come and go throughout the process when they were the subject matter experts. So the fire department's been there the last few meetings as we've talked about buildings and temporary structures, and their input is invaluable, and we need that, and we should be definitely in front of this rather than behind it. I just worry about additionally having an even number of seats, and if we are going to add an 8th, I would like to add a 9th that does represent licenses other than cultivation. I think the fire code is going to be especially important in processing, manufacturing, dispensaries, as we see more dispensaries come online. So as it being a cannabis task force, the cannabis representation is becoming smaller and smaller on our very own task force. So if the seat is approved, I would again advocate for a 9th seat that is cannabis specific. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that this, did you want to, go ahead, Supervisor Sabatier.
And this is why I wrote it in the memo that is a potential concern, is to have an even number, and I would suggest that Director Turner be the one to approach the board if she feels that she's hitting an impasse in being able to continue moving forward. At this moment in time, I'm not prepared to really hash out who would be the appropriate 9th one if that's something that the board wanted to move forward with. I have full faith that Director Turner will know if she needs to come and add a 9th seat, and that her leadership in that task force will be successful.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, I have total faith that could happen too, but I think it'd be more expeditious and more useful if the board gave direction. The comments of the last 2 speakers are very well taken, in that there are other license types that will presumably be out in these development projects, and 2 in particular that have been of concern in other districts that I'm familiar with have been volatile and non-volatile manufacturing. So we need to get our heads around what that is and understand where the state regs are. And then there is also interest in probably micro business would be the closest, but when we do talk about cannabis tourism and cannabis, abilities to interface with growers, very similar to wine grape growers, some of them are going to want to pop up some type of retail or storefront or something a little more accessible to our residents. And we don't have representation on the task force, to my knowledge, about that now. It is distinct from cultivation, not saying that some of these same projects may have mixed aspects of cultivation, processing, what have you, but there's a whole wide world beyond cultivation licensing, and I assume that if we are going to take the pain to get fire district representation on there, we should take equal pain to get on the task force those people that are going to be trying to explain that stuff and have this dialogue between the assorted people. So if we're going to spin up some fire district representation, let's make sure that they get exposed to everything that they're going to have concerns about. And the best way to do that is give direction to staff to add that another cannabis seat, and you can float it around too. You don't have to lock it out, but bring us a manufacturer 1 week, bring us a would-be a micro business applicant 1 week, and let's hear their concerns.
Ms. Grant?
Yes, just a Brown Act qualifier. Right now, the item on the agenda is consideration of adding a fire district seat. So that's what you have for discussion. If you want to ask staff to bring back further recommendations, you can do so. But you can't take any action on an item that's not before the public on the agenda.
Yeah, I see it. Brad Chatton, I see your hand up. If you'd like to unmute, why don't you state your name for the record, and then we'll start your 3 minutes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Since we're talking about having fire on the task force, and I know that's the subject, but it's been tossed around by board members or a board member of other possible seats. I would like to just propose the thought, not the subject, just the thought that water resources and air quality have a seat, because that affects all of us. And primarily that water resource is the big one, and air quality behind it. The sore subject is going to be having a seat of somebody from the sheriff's office.
So, Brad, can we just stick to the fire for now until we come back at a later date with something and other items or other seats that we'll decide to look at in the future?
I was just planting the seed of thought, and I totally get the concept of having fire on that board or on that task force. So I'm in favor of it, and we also got to think about the cost of violations of fire requirements and how medical enters into it, because so much of the fire is medical. And if we don't support the finances of the fire departments of all of them, all of the fire districts who respond to the medical, we are missing it. And so it needs to be financed. And it doesn't just happen. And if we don't respond, then maybe direction from the board can give the task force and community development some information about which households we don't respond to, which family members don't get medical care or transportation, because it's all tied together. And that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. It looks like, Bart, you have another comment. If you can, let's keep it brief, and I'll open up one last statement from you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I just wanted to point out Sheriff Martin, in a recent interview, stated that in Lake County, the commercial cannabis business is no longer profitable. In the years of 2021, the cannabis revenues
Okay,
coming
so
into the county.
how does this relate to a seat for the fire chiefs in that area?
It's essential that what they need in order to make us all fire safe, including the grows themselves, that their services be properly supported. The Valley Fire cost the county $12.5 million. We can't afford the cost to the county of another large wildfire. The fire chief's input is essential to building the proper foundational code for how to have a fire safe, fire prepared, accessible operation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so with that, I'll close public input, bring it back to the board.
I move to approve adding a Fire Chiefs Association seat to the Cannabis Task Force.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And motion carries. Thank you for that, and thank you for that item. And so,
Part B?
Oh, Part B, consideration of joining the newly created Fire Marshal Forum and directing staff to attend.
So I'm actually going to apologize for Part B. I felt more comfortable moving forward by bringing it to the board. Again, with a discussion with Chief Cepeda and Chief Duncan, we were trying to figure out there's new laws that are coming out. There's laws that already exist. We have multiple fire marshals, whether they're in different fire districts or homed right here in the county agency. And there may be some different interpretations on how these fire codes are implemented, and it would be nice to have across the board, everyone on the same page with an understanding on how these fire codes should be implemented. And again, in always trying to find ways to do better for our communities, there was a discussion of creating a forum within the Fire Chiefs Association where staff would be invited from community development, and I felt that I kind of overstepped my boundaries and wanted to make sure to get board approval rather than that happening and staff becoming a part of it. And so today I'm just looking for direction to staff to say, please attend these forums to make sure that we provide our input, we hear their input, and that we're always working together to better our safety in our communities.
Sure.
Yeah, this is sort of a conversation that's been happening with the Risk Reduction Authority in the past years. Not exactly, but similar. So I'm in favor. I'm just wondering what the time commitment is going to be. Like, is this quarterly? Is this monthly? And maybe Chief Ciancio can speak to that. But I do agree that having consistency and open dialogue with all of our fire marshals is essential.
Chief, if you'd like to come up.
Good morning. Yeah, so the Fire Marshals Committee, there are 2 fire districts in the county that have their own fire marshals. That would be Kelseyville and Lake County Fire. North Shore Fire and South Lake County Fire specifically rely on the county to do their fire marshal responsibilities because they have that ordinance that they are the fire marshal for the county properties. But why this is good, again, is because we're going to be giving all of our constituents the same message and the same laws and things like that. There are differences in all of the districts. I don't think the time commitment will be as much. It could be a meeting every quarter, something like that to be developed or as needed. That would be up to our fire marshals, our staff, and county staff to kind of work that detail out. So I don't think the commitment would be that. Working in other counties, especially Mendocino, I was part of a fire prevention committee, which we met quarterly and with county staff and just talked about different things when I was over there. So it's not uncommon to have that, and it's just a networking, more networking type commitment.
Yeah, I think it's great.
And in my assumption, it would be up to, again, our director to decide what her staff capacity and staff time availability is. And if it's not possible, if they are looking for a monthly and it's not possible to meet that month, I'm sure that they can meet a different time and make sure that it's done accordingly to what the department's needs are. So
thank you.
kind of leaving it open.
Development. I definitely appreciate Supervisor Sabatier's effort to avoid any perception of a single supervisor directing staff. So I'm really glad that you brought it to the board. We have started attending the fire chiefs meetings because we believe that it's very, very important to all stay coordinated. I've spoken to the chief building official already, and we're ready to meet with the fire chiefs, and uniformity throughout the fire safety checks that we do for structures is to the benefit of our residents. So we're happy to take this on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, if there's no other comments from the board, I'll open it up to public input. I not see anyone in the chambers, and I see one on Zoom. So if you can unmute, state your name for the record, and we'll start at 3 minutes. What's that? Oh, okay. All right, so it looks like we don't have any comments on this. I'll bring it back to the board.
I think all we need is consensus today to be able to move forward, since we're only directing staff.
Yes, okay. It looks like we have consensus. Ooh, I see a hand up. Oh, no, it's down. There we go. And, all right. So with that, it looks like we have our direction, and we can go from there, right? All right. So we are at 9:49. Let's see, because we have our appeal hearings at 10. CAO, do you have a recommendation?
Well, I hope the calendar would be a quick one, but I could be wrong.
Okay, let's do the calendar. We'll start with Supervisor Green.
Of course you would.
Oh, wait, calendars or the?
Calendar.
The calendar.
The calendar.
Item.
Oh, our calendar.
Yeah,
Okay,
your
sorry about
calendar.
that.
Oh,
We'll do-
that, oh,
I
either
thought
one.
you meant our calendar.
Oh,
Okay,
either one.
7.4, consideration
apologize.
of proposed 2023 Board of Supervisors regular meeting calendar. And with that, I'll give it to the CAO. Sorry about that, Supervisor Green.
And I apologize for not being clearer. So we proposed this calendar based on past practice. The one area I would like to discuss, possibly at a future date, is a governance meeting, either in late January or early February, prior to the mid-year on the 7th. However, we'll get back to that. But going through the calendar, are there any meetings that do we need to, not have or move or, I don't know.
All right, Supervisor Sabate, it looks like you.
Because it's basically pretty standard as it has been in the past.
So there's two items that I wanted to bring up, and I think if we fill in one of those January or possibly mid-February slots that are right now redded out, that's not even a right word, but that are basically canceled because it's the 5th Tuesday or it's after a holiday, that would be an appropriate one for the workshop for sure. But I wanted to ask the question to the board about the process for the budget. We've kind of gone back and forth where we did 1 day in June and 2 days in September, and then 2 days in June and 1 day in September. I wanted to at least have the discussion, and I'm hoping that Ms. Grant will allow the discussion, since it affects our calendar, on what would be the most appropriate, or what we feel is the most appropriate way to go through the process of the budget so that we can make sure and put it on the calendar appropriately.
Ms. Grant?
You're talking about scheduling additional meetings to your meeting schedule calendar, which is what's on the agenda.
And so that's one of the things I'd like to discuss. And then the other one, I see October 31st and September 5th are both days that we will not, I'm sorry, August 29th, I looked at the wrong ones. August 29th and September 5th being 2 weeks off, and I know that that can eventually really inflate our agenda that would show up on the 12th. And isn't the 12th supposed to be our budget? Or possibly the 19th, since it's usually due early October.
Well, I know that this year we had a regular meeting on the budgets in September, and then the 13th and 14th, or the days after were budgets.
Similarly, the way it's planned for June on the 14th and the 15th. So those were my two items I wanted to bring up, that there's 2 weeks where we'll almost have 3 weeks worth of stuff on the following September 12th. Do we want to have a meeting on October 31st, or at least prepare to maybe have one just in case?
August 29th.
Sorry, August 29th. I don't know why my eyes are going there. And how do we want to do the process of the budget? Is it 2 days and 1 day, or 1 day and 2 days? And I'll give my feedback. I prefer the 2 days in September because there's a little bit more factual information of where we stand by the end of the year. I know mid-year budget gives us a whole lot more understanding of where we are and what we can project, but I still think September offers a better discussion on a little bit more factual information of this is what we did last year, here are our actuals, or here are our estimates, and here is where we feel we're going to go with sales tax and property tax and things like that. So I like the 1 day in June and the 2 days in September myself.
And I've asked Stephen. I've asked the ACO, Mr. Carter, to come in to give his 2 cents on the budget, since though he's been promoted, he's still knee-deep in it.
Either side.
Good morning, board. Good morning, board, maybe. Good morning, board. Hello.
Yes.
To be honest, either method works. I personally prefer the 2 days in June and 1 in September. And the reason for that is in June, you know what their plan is for the rest of the year and give them authority to expend funds between July and September, where if you wait until September to do the 2 days, they have to be pretty limited between June and September, where we wouldn't allow most capital assets or any major projects to get going because we haven't had the full conversation. But either direction we go is very doable.
All right. So I know this year we didn't have the June meetings, but I know this year it's scheduled for next year. Go ahead, Supervisor Green.
Just a question, and I don't want to deep dive into the different calendars, but we do conflict with the state and the courts holidays, at least in October and September, where I think we have Indigenous Peoples Day, they have Native American Day in September. So I'm just looking at October 10th, and although the 9th is a holiday, and I guess it's normal practice that we would not meet the board after a holiday, I don't know if it's an actual holiday in terms of our ability to meet and have that. So I want to be respectful of that holiday. I want to take a look at the court's calendar and make sure we can mesh as best we can. And I wouldn't want to overturn long-standing board policy to not have a meeting right after a holiday. On the other hand, I want to know if that's a policy or how the board actually holds its holidays by not meeting after a holiday.
I'll actually ask Pam to come up here if I am incorrect in my next statement. As you know, we have MOUs with different labor groups that outline the different holidays, and this calendar reflects that with the labor groups.
All right.
Okay.
Ms. Grant?
But the board meeting day after a holiday, I believe, has just been a matter of board policy. There's no ordinance or anything that solidifies it. So it's adjustable or changeable if your board wishes to do so.
But it's important to be able to work the Monday and speak with staff and staff prepare. So it would be a real hardship to have a board meeting following a holiday.
I agree with that.
So are you still considering the August 29th meeting, having one that day so it's not pushing out September? Or are you thinking maybe to have a September 12th meeting and then put the budgets on the 13th of a Wednesday?
I think it would be easier for staff if we don't have to add anything outside of a Tuesday. I mean, I don't think it's an impossibility to do so, but I think if it's possible, and I don't even know if that's going to be on the 19th or the 12th, there's not any specifics as to when it's anticipated that we do the final budget in September at this moment that I see on the calendar at least.
Well, it says the 12th.
Yeah, it's a regular Tuesday. The single meeting turns into a regular meeting, so it's a funky color, half shaded green, half blue.
Yeah, it's only one item.
Maybe I'm colorblind, I didn't know it.
It's hard to make out. It looks different next to each other. I kind of like the meetings in June, so everybody does have the full fiscal year for their planning and workload. But I could go either way. But just coming through the September way, I'd like to try it again the June way. The other thing, and maybe this is just my PTSD, but I like putting things heavy things in September in the peak of fire season is always problematic for me. I don't plan anything like that because, you know, we could be in a situation where things are really bad and then we have to go through 2 days of budget hearings. So that's just based on my personal history. I like it buttoned up in blue sky time. And I would like to see the governance meeting maybe on January 19th, where we do have that Martin Luther King holiday, but we wouldn't have the Tuesday meeting, but we could meet on Thursday for the governance meeting.
And you had your hand up, so I wanted to.
And I would like to say one more thing about the budgets. If, you know, how September, if it's the one day, we generally would do kind of a relatively quick item. Nothing says that I can't expand upon how revenues are trending, et cetera, to give you the same comfort or change, reason why there's a change in September, so there's more information instead of necessarily 2 days, but a much larger item.
And so I wanted to also, in consideration of August, because I know that was a concern in the 4 meetings and not having having 2 weeks away from a meeting, so the agendas will get really big. Maybe either moving the first week to the 29th and considering the first a special meeting, because I think you can't have 5 in 1 month, right? You can only have 4, or can we have 5 in one month?
I would suspect we can.
Sorry.
I believe your ordinance says no board meeting on a 5th Tuesday, though your board has from time to time had special meetings on a 5th Tuesday. It's just no regularly scheduled meeting.
And so maybe we just schedule a special meeting, and if there's not anything, which I'm pretty sure there will be, we can adjourn it, but otherwise we can just add Supervisor Pyska.
Well, I think we didn't have the 2 meetings this year. We had the week, I think this is how, the schedule we had this year, right? We didn't have that last meeting in August, and then we didn't have it.
We actually
did
met
we
on
have a
August
special meeting?
30th. We did meet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we could have a special meeting.
Yeah, we'll just do that.
Okay, and I'm good. I wanted to at least have the conversation about the budget. It sounds to me like staying makes sense. I appreciate the comments from Vice Chair as well as Mr. Carter. And so I'm okay with moving forward.
I just want to confirm the discussion, if I may.
Yes.
So we'll keep the budget as presented, the budget dates. How about we reserve both the 19th and the 31st for possible workshop dates? Just reserve it that way, just depends on planning and getting it. That way we have 2 options. And then you still want to leave the 29th of August, reserve it as a special meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments from the board? Open it up to the public briefly. And then I'll bring it back to the board for, let's see, it's action.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the proposed as amended 2023 Board of Supervisors regular meeting calendar.
Second.
Okay. As amended.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And motion carries. I know we're at our 10 o'clock. If we could take a brief 5-minute break before we start those, then we'll go ahead and do that. So we'll be back at 10:07. right. All right, we're back from our break. We'll move on to our 10 a.m. assessment appeal hearing, sitting as the Board of Equalization. We'll start with 8.1, consideration of the following assessment appeal application number 58-2020 Lakeport Post-Acute. And it looks like we have Dave Schwenger on board with us, and so I'll give the floor to you, sir.
Thank you. Johanna received a withdrawal this morning, so we'd ask that the board accept the applicant's withdrawal and have this appeal denied.
Any questions from the board? And this one is not public input, we don't have to, okay. And so with that, is there any action that the board would love to take?
Just a motion to accept the withdrawal and deny the appeal.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so next we'll move on to our 8.2, continue the following assessment appeal applications to the May 2nd, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting number 60-2020, 61-2020, 62-2020, 20-2021, 21-2021, H&S Energy. All right, Mr. Schwenger.
Yeah, we are working with the applicant. We just need more time to go over some of their appraisals. We just ask that the applicant and the assessor agree that we will hear this in May or have this resolved and bring back to the board by the May board hearing.
All right, any comments from the board? Hearing none, we're ready for action.
I'll move we continue the following assessment appeal applications to the May 2nd, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting, numbers 60-2020, 61-2020, 62-2020, 20-2021, 21-2021, pertaining to H&S Energy and H&S Energy LLC.
I forgot a time, at 10 o'clock. Can you say that?
At 10 a.m., date and time certain. Thank you.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Schwenger.
Thank you, board.
All right. With that, we'll go back to our non-timed items. 7.2, consideration to amend section 2-3A1 of Article 1, Chapter 2 of the Lake County Code, compensation of the Board of Supervisors, and I'll turn this over to Susan Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. HR Director Pam Samick and ACAO Stephen Carter will be presenting this item to the board for their consideration.
All right.
Good morning, Board. Pam Samick, HR Director. On October 20th, 2020, the board implemented the first round of the 2019 class and comp study, at which time the Board of Supervisors salaries were frozen at $63,714, with an additional $2,400 for the chair. Prior to the implementation of the class and comp, board salaries were set at 60% of the average elected department heads. To mitigate the appearance of a conflict of your board approving raises for themselves, staff recommends moving to a percentage of the Superior Court judge salary, with the board receiving 5% per the illustration attached in the documents. So if we were at 60% of the elected salaries and we implemented board salaries at that time, your salary would have been $87,573. Currently, the Superior Court judge salary is at $229,125. If we align your salaries at 38%, the annual board salary would be $88,483, and 5% add pay to the chair would be $4,472. The difference in payroll taxes is approximately $125,918 per year without benefits. This increase would be due to unfreezing the salary and increasing the chair add pay to 5%, and aligning the grades to grade E147 and E149. However, it should be noted, had you taken the raises when the class and comp was implemented, the difference would have been $6,574. So we're seeking direction to move your salaries to align with the Superior Court judge salaries.
Stephen, did you have anything to add? Or?
I'm more for Q&A that will come.
Okay. Supervisor Sabatier?
I'm going to ask the same questions that I already asked Mr. Carter, but I think it's practical for everybody to hear it, including the public. So we're talking only right now without benefits, and I wanted to make sure that we understood budget-wise exactly what we would be agreeing to or not agreeing to by looking at the bulk number of what would change if this was approved. And then I think I'll leave it at that for now.
All right. Good morning, Board, again. So what Supervisor Sabatier is referring to is, in the memo, we show that it's just over $125,000 difference for a full year, just in your payroll. If you include benefits, the calculation goes to $165,000 a year. That would be the fully loaded cost of the difference for one full year. So that's not exactly the cost for the remainder of this year, that's the full year cost. And part of our other conversation, which we'll get into, is how would we pay for that $165,000? So the way that I'm currently looking at possibly funding that would actually be through ongoing revenues that are coming in higher than we budgeted for. So example, Bradley Burns, which is the sales tax. Through October, we've already received a little over $71,000 more than we did through the same time period last fiscal year. And last fiscal year, we actually had a banner year, the highest year we ever had. And I actually budgeted, instead of the 4.3 that came in last year, I only budgeted at 4 million. So there is very likely plenty of ongoing revenue there, but we wouldn't have to stop there, because also property tax, by the time final budget came around, everything wasn't finalized. I actually requested to have the budget for property tax be just over 18 million. Well, what came in, this part Supervisor Sabatier didn't hear, last fiscal year it came in at 18,600,000. So we're already going to, unless property tax decreases, which on average it goes up by about 2 to 3% each year, there's already revenue that we can recognize during mid-year budget to cover this expense as ongoing revenue.
All right. That was my next question, is where does it come from? So, thank you.
Supervisor Green?
Well, I think Susan.
Oh, Susan, go ahead.
The one thing I was going to add to Pam's presentation is that today we're giving us direction to bring back the amended ordinance in order to actually accentuate the actual process of the pay increase for the board.
All right.
So I just wanted to make that clear, that there's one more step after this, and that would be amending the ordinance.
Okay. Ms. Grant?
Just as a point of interest, the ordinance will require the standard 2 readings and then is not effective until 60 days after the second reading. So there's an exception for this.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, just a math question on the last sentence of the staff report. I think when you went class and comp, it was somewhere around 87 would have been recommended, and if we go to the judges index, 88. But in the last sentence of the staff report, starting with the word however, is that number right, 6574, if it had gone with a class and comp adjustment? Because it seems low. If the salaries were roughly equivalent, 87 versus 88, and the difference in payroll is 125 if we use the judges index, is it fair to say that if we had done a class and comp style adjustment based on director salaries, it would have been more than 6574?
Yes. The 65 is the difference if you had gone with the raises at the time between then and now. So I was just trying to illustrate the point that it's not 125,000 without benefits.
Let me try to clarify. So what it is if you went with the 60% of electeds like it previously was in the ordinance, that would have put you up only 6,500 less than what we're proposing right now. So if it was done during the time of the study, let's say you would have been 88, and what we're proposing to be the closest we can to a judge is 88,500. Between all of you guys, there's only a $6,500 difference between what it would have been and what we're proposing.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Any other comments from the board? Supervisor Pyska?
Well, obviously, this is an uncomfortable conversation for us to have. It's awkward, but it is important for the health of our county, for the health of this board, to make sure that the salary for these positions reflect the role and the responsibility. And we'll encourage qualified people to step up and take this role in the future. We have noticed over the last year that we've had difficulty. I mentioned this before, but nobody ran against either of you. And it was sort of difficult to fill the District 4 seat. And I think the salary is one reason for that. And if we want to attract the people that this county really needs to be running this board in the future, this is a step that we need to take for that, for the health of our county and the health of our board.
All right. Supervisor Green?
I just want to echo Supervisor Pyska's comments, and I know this is going to look, awkward is one word. But as the new kid on the block, I do think there's a disincentive to people who would be interested in filling these seats unless there is a substantial adjustment. I mean, unlike my colleagues here, I was until very recently line staff, and it took about 2 weeks for me to crunch the numbers and figure out, is this really a big old promo, or is it more of a lateral move with a lot of hours that I didn't previously incur? And it was more of the lateral move. So I went ahead and did it, but it wasn't for any great bump. And so I realize I've already been head up in my first week. I realize there are plenty of people with very rightful salary concerns on the lower edges of our pay bracket, IHSS. We're going to hit up. And that's part of the job that we're getting paid for, is to field those concerns about how we compensate our employees and also how we build the economy so that people who don't work for the county are getting livable wages as well. So I appreciate it may seem awkward, and maybe we'll take some hits on it, but I'm all in on this. One thing I like about it, particularly in bouncing this proposal off some friends of mine, was like, we don't want to do that. But when then I explained that the conflict, the very apparent conflict, that if we vote on our own salaries, if we do tie it to a judicial salary and we just kind of use that as the metric, then that is something we can ride proudly into the future and say, hey, we tackled it. We get that the conflict can be there in a very real way, and we took steps to address it. So not only will we address the very real shortfall, I think, in the current salary structure, but I think we'll be paying it forward for future boards by resolving that conflict for them. Thank you.
Supervisor Sabatier?
So a couple of things. One, I think the conflict is always going to exist because we could always reconnect it to elected salaries if we want to. We get to make those decisions here. So connecting it to Superior Court judge at least takes it away. So if we do give raises to electeds, it doesn't impact us, but we can always change it back. That's our capabilities here. I'd like to talk about timeline. And I'd like to talk about something I brought up last time when this discussion came up, and that's the idea of what is the standard that we want to set and expect from us and from all future Board of Supervisors. And we have some procedure manuals, but there's not many rules and regulations. And granted, we're never going to get in trouble. That's not what we can do here. But if we at least set it on paper, we can maybe help create a standard of what is expected of us. How many meetings are we supposed to go to? Right now, if we show up to one meeting a year, is there anything that kicks us out? Is there anything that says you're a bad supervisor? We should at least set expectations and say, we expect you to get to 80, 90, 95% of your meetings, something along those lines, where right now it's vacant. There is no expectation set. And I think that if we're going to do this, we hold our people accountable. We need to set something that holds us accountable, that we provide to the public, so the public can hold us accountable as well, saying, hey, you're not meeting the expectations of what we intended for you to do by being elected. It's one of those difficult things, because being elected, it's not like you can get fired, but a recall can happen or things like that. But I'd like to see some stuff in writing of what we expect from all of us. So that we can maybe try to raise that bar and set it to a tone that we know when we leave, that's going to be what others are expected to meet. And that's a different discussion, but that's what I would like to have, no matter if we move forward or not. If we move forward, I know I spoke with Mr. Carter. I think that the most appropriate, in my opinion, because of more hard fact evidence of where we are financially, that this would be a change that should occur, in my opinion, at mid-year budget review and take effect like February 1st or something like that.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, so I agree that there should be a little more in there that speaks to this job being a full-time job. And I know that that was looked at during the class and comp and how other counties determine that. It's difficult to put a lot of numbers and parameters on that, but I think it was Humboldt County, was it Humboldt County, that said this is, just said this is a full-time position. And we want it to be a full-time position. We don't want to have supervisors having to have other jobs that are going to take them away from this work. And, you know, you've got to have the flexibility to go to meetings pretty much any time of day or night. You know, so if you have to have another job, then that's going to take away from your time here. I am concerned about putting too many restrictions on that, but I think if we put language in there that says the expectation is a full-time position, and kind of just leave it at that. That works for me, and I know that it was, that was the only county that called it out, I think.
Correct. And full-time is based on 40 hours. So it was actually specified, it was when we spoke to their HR department, that it was based on a 40-hour work week.
And I think it's the same direction of what I'm asking. I think we can get into the specifics when we get into that conversation, but it's exactly in the same direction of what are some expectation, and that could be one of them, if not the only one. So I think just having the conversation and putting something a little bit more in writing is what I'm looking for. I think the people expect something from us, and I think that we can easily define what those expectations could be.
All right. I'm not hearing anything else from the board. I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the chambers that has any comment? I'll start at the top of Zoom. Sharice Reynolds, if you would unmute and state your name for the record. We'll start at 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Sharice Reynolds, and I am an employee of the County of Lake. And I wanted to say that I really appreciate the board's approval of both the class and comp study and the subsequent raises that you provided to make us competitive with the surrounding counties. It has been life-changing for us. And I wanted to let you know that I recently learned just how little the Board of Supervisors make. Using myself as an example, I am a supervisor at social services. I'm not a manager, I'm not a deputy, I'm just a supervisor, and I make more than the Board of Supervisors. And also I know that at least one member of the Board of Supervisors spends 20 to 25% of their salary on insurance for their family. And that was so surprising to me. It's my understanding that the wage is so low for a couple of reasons. One, the Board of Supervisors job, I believe, started out as a part-time job. And also the board did not take raises when the rest of us got our raises. And in my opinion, it seems to me that now is the time to rectify this inequity. without vilifying the board and saying that they're padding their own pockets, as some people have, said in the community. I think this is a full-time job. It deserves a full-time salary. We want to, it's no different than our positions for the county. We want to recruit and attract the best people for the job. And I can empathize with the newest supervisor that had to make a decision as to whether or not he was going to leave his current job to move over to the board. I personally wouldn't, because right now I make a lot more. And so I am a member of the public as well, and I support the Board of Supervisors getting a living wage. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have 707-245-4550. If you can unmute, state your name for the record, and we'll start your 3 minutes.
Hey, this is Elizabeth Larson with Lake County News.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I'm curious when the last time was that the Board of Supervisors received a salary increase of this size all at once. It sounds like you're saying the justification is that you are now a full-time job rather than part-time. I'm still not, so those are my first two questions. When was the last time you got a raise this large? And is the justification because you say you're now moving officially to full-time? The third question, I don't understand how you're saying you're not voting for your raises, because you're putting a mechanism in place that will, you're going to be voting to put a mechanism in place. I'm not quite sure how you can say you're not going to be voting for it. But I'm also questioning, until today, you didn't share with the public what your mechanism was to deal with the benefits. And it's this idea that, well, we'll deal when we have overages in certain areas, but what do you do in the years when you don't? What do you do in the years where things are severely under budget? And finally, I'm curious about the statement from Supervisor Pyska about the District 4 seat being hard to fill. There were at least 3 applicants, and only one of them was acknowledged by the governor's office as far as I can tell. So I'm not quite sure where this idea of it was hard to fill. There were people who wanted the job who weren't even acknowledged in the process. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you.
The last time the board received an increase was in 2015 when the entire county got a 3% COLA.
And then full-time versus part-time. I just think that's been stated. I don't know if that's one of the justifications. Was that something, Stephen, do you know?
That one I don't know.
I just know that when talking about it before, folks, everyone that I've talked to that's been a supervisor has always had some sort of an additional job or income. I know since when I joined in 2019, I was doing 2 simultaneous jobs, but I did not run for the second term in the tribe so that I can concentrate fully on my district. I'm not sure. I know everyone else here is currently full-time employees, and of course, like Supervisor Sabatier said, I think that at another time, if the board decides and gives direction to the staff to do something else, if everybody that's elected has other avenues or something of that nature, they can address it then. Another thing I know that I talked about when they brought up raises in 2019, when I was very green, if you will, I mentioned that don't give us a raise, give us staff. And then that was like, oh man, that was like, and I didn't mean staff like, I meant like staff members so that we can have people doing tasks. And I regretted saying that, but either way, yeah, I just figured I'd help with that. I don't know if that answers the question. But I do know that the mechanism in place, and I'll try this one, but someone else can help me if need be. But
Do you mind if I help out? Because I think that's based on a comment that I was making, that we could always change that. I mean, we're voting no matter what. It's just that no matter the mechanism we choose, we could always bring this exact type of agenda item back to us to have another discussion of, do we continue the mechanism? Do we change it to 45% with the same mechanism? I mean, to me, the idea that we're insulating ourselves by doing this is not very real.
Right. And so I think
hopefully that helps out.
Yeah, it does. And the only thing that I know with the mechanism is that attaching it to the judge's salary for me ends the every year constant discussion about it unless the board decides to give that direction. And that way, for me, to me, I don't want to have the discussion every year, you know, I mean, not as long, I only have 4 more years, but at the same time, I don't want to talk about it every year, and I'd rather it just be something that's done, and especially for the next supervisors, whoever fills our seats later down the line, if this stays in place the way it is, it's not something that needs to be discussed. One less controversy, in my opinion. I know folks in this county like controversy. For me, I like to have less and focus on the issue, so that's just my personal opinion. But, and does anyone else want to help answer that with mechanism, or?
I'll just speak to the comment about about my comment, or the question about my comment is that I think that there was a long period of time where there was only one applicant for the seat. I know there was one applicant that lived in my district, so they weren't qualified. I don't know about the other 2, and I hadn't heard about them until just towards the, I think in September is when I heard that there were other applicants that applied. So there was a significant amount of time where there was only one person that applied, to my knowledge, and that's why I made that comment.
I see. And then overages, I think I'll leave. Well, did you want to add something, Supervisor Green? Overages, I'll leave that to you, Stephen. A question about overages, and in the future, if overages change, how are we justifying this in the future for the amount?
Well, that's what would be taken care of in the budgeting process. This is a standard salary like any other employee in that regard, to where if something happens in the future, we would have to take a look at either lowering our expenses or finding a way to increase revenue. It would be a standard budgetary item. $165,000 isn't going to cause us to go over in any particular year, so it really depends on the scenario and what happens, and then we would react at that time. We do have a lot of vacancies that technically don't have a cost, but they are budgeted. So there is leeway within the budget without taking any actions of anything further. Depends on the scenario.
Supervisor Sabatier?
And that's exactly why I brought up the idea of waiting until mid-year budget, where there's a little bit more concrete of how we're doing, how are things handled with the economy. And I think that waiting until February 1st is the wise decision, because this is going to be ongoing. This is not one time. And I think that we'll have a better understanding of where we are, where it comes from, and if it can be applied on an annual basis rather than saying yes today without having all the information. And obviously, we don't have anything to say yes to other than direction to staff today, but that would be my reason for saying February.
Well, the yes would be in a resolution when it comes back, because then that's when we can determine from that point. This isn't a yes, this isn't saying we get it, this is saying giving direction to staff. Go ahead.
Okay, but I do want to bring up that when we spoke about this last spring, you said the same thing about the budgeting in June and then in September. So at some point, we do have to make this decision.
And we failed, and I asked about it, the conversation for the previous budget, it wasn't there. And I think that we failed, and we should not just jump in and make changes. We need to make changes when we have a big picture perspective to ensure that we have that, or else it should have been a part of the conversation in June and September.
Yeah, but just recalling the conversation, you wanted to wait until after we had the budget conversation so that Stephen had an idea of how this would work. So I'm just bringing that up. But I'm fine with waiting until mid-year budget. And so is that when you want to bring the ordinance? So then it'll be 60 days after that? Because, I mean, that puts us 6 months out.
I'm comfortable with that. I'm okay with that. I think we need to have concrete evidence of longevity.
Do we have concrete evidence of longevity?
I have multiple years of history. the last 3 or 4 have been extraordinary.
Right.
So we would have to have more assumptions at this point because we're only 3 months in. And what Supervisor Spate is talking about is I'd have 6 months of data to where it's pretty sure you'd have to have a stark decline for it to not match what we're looking at.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, I don't want to saddle staff. We're just being asked to direct staff to proceed with the necessary steps. Let's get on with that. I don't want to saddle them with an expectation of a timeline or that we need job descriptions all of a sudden. I get to go down to Disneyland in 2 weeks and learn all the job descriptions that come with being a supervisor, all the government codes that apply, all the assessment appeals we're going to listen to, other appeals of a quasi-judicial nature. I'm going to support this, and we're going to find the money to pay for it, and we have a big old budget, and I acknowledge there may be some challenges in finding the sustainability, but I have every confidence the staff will get us there, and I don't want to hang this up on some potential concerns that aren't in evidence right now. I just think we can probably move ahead with the recommended action.
All right, and so I know we were in public input. I see that we have 707-295, 7257. If you can unmute and speak your name for the record, and we'll start your 3 minutes.
Hello, this is Bart Levinson. This is so awkward to speak to this. I support the board and appreciate everything that you all do. And I want to be really clear on that. I'm very concerned that earlier in this meeting today, we heard from one person about how his property taxes are not meeting his property value. And I think that we all know that, like the caving of the commercial cannabis industry, we are in an economic time of flux. Most of our properties are worth less. So I'm very concerned about budgeting, counting on a property tax increase, and especially given that this discussion is following your 2 days of budget meetings when there were so many needs of each department, still 20 to 25% understaffed, having just enough employees to meet their basic tasks. I so appreciate what you do. I totally support your getting the fair wage for that. It's just the actual numbers of how to make it all work. And in this time of such great variables of COVID, now recession, and in the past, our fires and floods, we do need to acknowledge that this county goes through enormous fluctuations, and it has to be carefully planned for. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to respond.
Go ahead.
I mean, that's why we have been building up our reserves account, and we have been through we've seen extraordinary income and revenue the last couple of years, and we have been padding our reserves, and we have been planning for those rainy days. And we have been doing all of those things do you want to speak to that, Stephen?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. No, sorry, you looked like you were nodding.
Well, you're correct.
So yes, correct. Like we are, you never know what's coming along the horizon, but we have been very diligent in our planning so that we have enough reserves.
Stephen.
And I do want to say something about property taxes. If you look over the history of 20 plus years, there are very few years that it actually decreases. Property to property, yes, but the actual income after AB8 is done to the taxing entities, the county piece does not fluctuate a whole ton other than it is over that course of time 2.38% increase over 20, 30 years, and over the last few years, it's the exact same, even actually slightly higher. So there's only been, if I recall correctly, maybe 2 years where it was actually a decrease year over year for property tax. Now, from the county level. So it's a very stable source, even though house to house per se, it changes quite a bit potentially.
With that,
Oh, there's more hands.
yes, there is. Jillian Perillo, if you can unmute and,
Thank you so much. Jillian Perillo on North Lakeport. I just want to express my full support for the proposed new compensation plan for Lake County. At a minimum, I mean, I'm sort of shocked to see that a supervisor for the County of Lake is paid at 60% of an elective county official's salary, and also only 38% of a Superior Court judge's compensation, but maybe that's a discussion for another day. There are many points to be made about this in favor of the increase. I want to emphasize and echo Supervisor Pyska. It's very difficult to get the interest of candidates who are interested in stepping up to fill a position once they learn about the current salary level. Ms. Larson talks about 3 candidates that applied. One of them was out of district, I know for sure. But there were many, many other people that were qualified, highly qualified, and once they learned the compensation plan, they would have liked to have done the job, but they have a family support, they have bills to pay, and they make a lot more money doing what they're doing already, and they weren't willing to make that sacrifice. So in order for the county to thrive, we need to be able to attract top candidates, and that requires we offer competitive salary, compensation level, and you know, as the more challenges we have in this county, the more we need really skilled people who are spending full time working on this job and are paid a fair wage. Thank you.
all right. Thank you for that. I'm not sure if this is a repeat hand or if you just didn't put her hand down. 707-295-7257. Okay, I think it's a repeat hand, so with that, we'll go. Oh, wait, then, sorry, it's Brad Chatton. His hand was up earlier. I think he had an issue with unmuting. If you can unmute, we'll start your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Brad Chatton here. Bruno had a great comment earlier about the expectations. I just have the one comment that is kind of raises my eyebrow, is when the supervisors read their daily calendars or their weekly calendars, and I hear that they are having a meeting with a constituent, and being the skeptical person that I am, and knowing many supervisors over the years, but recently I have noticed one particular supervisor who says, I'm meeting with, on such and such a day at this time, a constituent. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. I'll put myself close by. And that meeting, the constituent was pretty much the cashier clerk at the local grocery and back home. And that was not fair. So I would ask the supervisors, when they say they're meeting with constituents, they don't have to say their name, but let's hear the business. You know, I mean, if it's a lot line adjustment, if it's a complaint with a sewer problem or a road problem or whatever the problem is. But as a citizen who observes activities of our supervisors, and I don't do it on a daily basis, that's for sure, but I think one of you know that your meeting with a constituent was with a store clerk. And so I'm going to ask y'all to think about that when you're when you're giving your calendar, be a little more informative of what you're doing with your time. Because I understand that it does take time. I agree with your increase. It is, I know supervisors from other counties. I have a relative who's a supervisor in another county, and he makes much more, much more. But he actually works 50 and 60 hours sometimes, and he's highly involved. And I'm sure some of your supervisors work that schedule too, but it is not a fair assumption that everything is a constituent in your district and you're doing your shopping. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Supervisor Pyska.
Yeah, just to clarify, when we give our calendars, that's what we know what's happening on Tuesday. And, you know, as the day goes on, those calendars fill up, and that doesn't account for phone calls and emails and all kinds of other things. And I don't know what this comment is about or who it's directed to. But, you know, if you had written down that time when that supervisor was meeting in constituent, it's completely likely that maybe there was a cancellation. I don't know. But this is what our calendars look like on Tuesday. And things change dramatically as the week goes on, and the weekend as well.
Did you want to add something?
I have a question. Because there's 2 readings with regard to this ordinance, and then it doesn't become effective 60 days after, does the board want us to bring that like in December in preparation for the February budget mid-year, or do you want us to wait till February to begin that process? I'm just asking because, you know, there is a time period that the ordinance requires to make it effective. Any thoughts?
Supervisor Sabatier?
I'll just express what I've already said. I would like to have concrete evidence of continued revenues that can support this and not projections. And that's why I think mid-year, our September budget is absolutely a projection. Mid-year, what I love about mid-year is it has some very concrete evidence of how the year has gone, and the projections are that much more accurate as to how it's going to continue to go. And that is why I mentioned that if it's possible to bring that level of information at a December date, I don't know if that's even possible, but that's what I'm looking for, because we have to know what's there rather than just say this sounds good.
Stephen?
Well,
Supervisor Green?
Just a suggestion, and again, I don't want to get in the weeds on projections. We're either going to do this or not, and we're going to find the money. One way to do it would be introduce the ordinance, give it an effective date of July 1. That'll get us at the start of the fiscal year. Whatever budgeting we got to do to lock it in, and any projections we need to address and adjust, we can do it. But to move the ordinance, let's move the ordinance forward sooner than later. Let's give it an effective date that will be well past 60 days, whatever the introduction date is. Give it the effective date of the start of the next fiscal year, and then we can do all the budgeting and all the examination we need to at that. So that'd be a suggestion, is we'll advance this, but give direction to staff that whatever ordinance or resolution is needed, it will give an effective date of the next fiscal year.
Stephen?
I will say as long as it's not the 1st of December, but shortly to like 2 weeks into December, I will know the first full payment of property tax, which will give me really hard data on whether I'm correct in that assumption, which I'm in the 90th percentile of a surety there. That alone would pay for this. The sales tax, I would only have 5 months of.
And like I said, as long as it's concrete evidence, that's what matters to me, for us to be provided the right information for making our decision.
Yeah.
So I'll go on to our next public input. Betsy Kahn, if you can unmute, and we will start your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Board. I'm with Jillian. I think you all deserve to make a decent rate of pay. Everybody does. I'd like to add to what I think Mr. Chatton was referring to, specific to your calendar announcements that you make. One of the tasks that I have as a reporter is to follow what you do, when you do it, how you do it, and talk to the listeners of our radio station about that activity. But the reporting, and you guys have improved this. Bruno, you've been a tremendous influence on this. Mrs. Peiska has been a tremendous influence on this over the last 2 years, giving us more information about what you're doing and why you're doing it, when you're doing it. But you have no accountability. There is no staff that records your correspondence. We have no access to knowledge about exactly what you're doing in those ad hoc committees or those committees that you create where you say there's not going to be any public input. Those are decisions that you make, and you're entrusted, all of you, with the guidance and leadership of how we need to move forward to improve our survivability here and our sustainability. All those are fine, but I would really appreciate if you would be more clear and maybe even publish what your schedules are so that we could access those. Also, if you would please endow the information necessary for the public to participate in the boards, committees, and commissions that you create by filling in those blanks on your website when you do the website update. There's a lot you need to do to help the public participate, but I agree that you should be getting a very good salary for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michael Wegner. If you can unmute, state your name for the record, and we'll go from there.
Hello, this is Michael Wegner. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Crandall. You know, I've heard a lot of different positions or perspectives today, and I think I'd just like to point out a couple of things without dissecting this too much. The bottom line is that the positions that you guys hold are super important positions. And with that, they require a lot of time and attention. And because you're an elected official, I think that there's a certain amount of trust that's given with that. And that's why you don't necessarily need to be dictating every aspect of what you're doing. And to qualify your job or your salary it seems a little ridiculous to say that we should be watching every aspect of an elected official's position. I think at 60,000 or 60 and change, that's not even a livable wage in the state of California. Attracting new talent or qualified talent in the future is, of course, going to be, you know, in some regard, reliant on the wage that that person's going to be making or getting. While you guys have kind of drawn this correlation between a Superior Court judge and salary to kind of quantify or qualify salary, I think that you could look at it a lot of different ways. That's one way to look at it. The way I see it is more of an executive position. The county being a municipal corporation, as an executive for that corporation, there's not a single executive in, you know, across the board where salaries are below $100,000. So I think the amount that you're looking at is quite fair. I think that obviously the math behind it is important to make sure that all of those obligations for the county are taken into account. And if we really looked at the municipal corporation type, you know, it's monies that can be created or accrued through the benefit or through the company or the county doing better and becoming more profitable. So I think that the request for the amount is definitely qualifiable. And I think that it has to be put into place, or people just are not going to want to take on that position. And I really respect all of you for taking on that position with that limited monetary amount. Obviously, you're not doing it for the money. So I highly respect you folks.
So
and with that, I'll close my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It looks like we still have some hands up, so I'll go ahead and go back to, I think it's Betsy was first. So if you can, if you would like to unmute, if you had more to add. Oh, she put her hand down. Okay, and then Brad, if you had more to add, go ahead and unmute, and let's try and keep it brief, but we'll let you finish your comments. All right, looks like, all right, the hand went down. Michael's is probably finished as well. So with that, there's not anyone else. Actually, we do. Joan, if you'd like to come to the microphone and state your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes to make your statement.
I've been here a while. I still consider myself a journalist. I want to say that I think there should be something between a complaint for damages and a lawsuit by which the public can be supportive and be critical and give evaluations. Bruno, I don't agree with you, but you returned my call within 24 hours. I've had different responses from different supervisors. If there's a personality difference, we need to solve it. I think that a judge has strict things he has to follow in not talking to the people that come to his court. I hope that you don't have the same restrictions. We're all a family. We need to learn to get along without suing each other. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Anita Grant gave me a face mask the other day. That was really nice. I've given her a rough time. But we need to learn to live together.
Thank you.
You need to give your name for the record, too.
Yeah, Joan Moss, I'll just state it for her. It's easier that way. There any other public input? All right. So I'll bring it back to the board for, I think it's just direction, right?
I want to add something real quick. There is so much that I feel can't be placed on a calendar. For example, I think it is our job and duty to be successful, and in order to be successful, we have to build relationships. On a weekly basis, I don't know how many department heads I'm sitting down with, well, not sitting down with, on the phone or sitting down with in person. Let's check up, where are we on this issue that we're dealing with? Where are we with this? And just to get an update and understanding, and that to me is one of the most valuable things that we need to do, is building relationships so that there's trust and there's that collaboration where we know we can work together and we understand one another. And that's always a continued effort. And that goes with, at least for me, for the city of Clear Lake, for all of you with your municipal advisory boards and things like that. There's things that can't be placed on a calendar, but that need to get done. And if they don't get done, we're not going to be successful. I just think that the calendar thing, I personally kind of find useless, just to know what meetings we're doing, other than we find out, oops, that's not on my calendar, so that becomes useful. But telling what we have accomplished and what we are doing in those meetings, I think is absolutely useful. That way we can be a little bit more up to date, and we're not allowed to really discuss it because of Brown Act issues, but at least we can update each other on the thing. So I think the calendar thing is, it's a little weird to me. I don't want somebody following me from my calendar thing. That's awkward, but we're here to do the job that we were elected to do, and there's a whole lot more to it than just meetings. and coming here on Tuesday.
A lot of work happens at the grocery store and the post office, by the way.
If there's nothing further, Honorable Chair, I move that we direct staff to proceed with the necessary steps to amend Section 2-3A.1 of Article 1, Chapter 2 of the Lake County Code, compensation of the Board of Supervisors as recommended.
If I may ask for a clarification, as recommended, meaning the timeline that we discussed in potentially mid-December to bring it back?
Yes.
Is that what the motion is? Yes. Okay.
Well, and also to add language that it's a full-time position.
And I think if we can have I'll say second to this one, and then I'll add something.
Well, there's nothing to amend on this, so I appreciate the comments, but when we bring back the resolution,
Ordinance.
points are taken then. So do we need an amendment to the motion to reflect those directions to staff, or can you get that? Yes, you do need that? Okay. Yeah. Then thank you for the amendments.
Can you restate the whole point for me?
It's going to take two of us to do it. What were the 2 points? I'll do it. One, bring it back ASAP. Don't wait till June to bring it back, but then...
Well, it was mid-December following the confirmation of property taxes.
First payment of.
First payment of property taxes and job description.
Tell you what, let's just leave it open in January. How about the direction to bring it back in January? That'll buy time for everyone. And the 2 bullet points you wanted were some type of job description?
/ expectations.
What's CAO?
Yes, I mean, the only item I heard is that it's a full-time position as far as expectations.
I'd like to bring it back so we can have a further discussion specific to that, since that's not necessarily what's on our agenda today, but what are the expectations?
Ms. Grant?
What, so wait, we're bringing it as a separate discussion for expectations, or is this just going to be in the ordinance?
I recommend that we just do, we bring back the ordinance for 2 readings with a revenue report either in late December or early January, and separately, we can bring back information regarding job descriptions and expectations.
And I know that it's not job description, because that's described within the statutes of our Constitution for the state, but we can talk about expectations internally. I think that would be more appropriate.
And your board has existing policies, procedures, and guidelines for conduct, et cetera, that can be augmented as you wish to more fully flesh out your function.
I think once those are highlighted, we'll see that they'll probably stand, but, so.
Did you get all that?
Absolutely not. You guys are talking in circles again. Let me see. So it sounds like you want to parse off the job description. Okay. And it sounds like so mainly the motion is focused on the fiscal part. So how about if we move to direct staff to proceed with the necessary steps to amend Section 2-3A.1 of Article 1, Chapter 2 of the Lake County Code, yada, yada. And that direction to bring it back no later than, I think it would be January 23rd would be the latest. That would buy you plenty of time. And you'll have all your revenue forecasts and all the stuff you need then. Would that work?
Works for me.
For the ordinance as far as the compensation, and then we're also given direction to do something with job descriptions, but we're not giving direction to do that by a date certain, right?
Correct. Okay. And actually, any one of the board members can sponsor that and bring that forward. An augmentation of the...
All right, so we didn't even talk about job descriptions there. So Johanna, is that a clear enough motion? You need 2 sentences. Okay, so the first sentence will be as stated in the recommended action, and then the amendment will be comma.
Yeah, it just says direction to staff.
What do you,
Can we do direction, or would you rather see a motion, Anita?
What do you want from me?
The action with regard to the ordinance should just simply be brought back with what your board wishes to see. If you're going to, if you want it back no later than January 23rd, then you should so state. As far as direction to staff, I'm concerned about the job description for elected officials. So I think probably what you want to give direction to staff is to bring back, as soon as practically possible, vehicles to expand upon and improve a description of expected duties and obligations of board members.
So
That is the perfect
policies
direction.
And state guidelines. Yeah.
So one's a motion, the other one's consensus.
Okay, so consensus for the ordinance.
No, motion for the ordinance.
Sorry.
Motion and consensus for the
Staff direction.
expected duties and obligations.
Okay, do you see us earning our pay today? Do you see it? I see it. Do I have anything resembling a motion, Johanna? That is,
The staff report has a motion that you can use.
all right, I think I did. So we're going to direct staff to proceed, blah, 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 as recommended, and that recommendation is to bring it back no later than January 23rd.
January 23rd or December 23rd?
No, we want the
Said no
mid-December
later.
revenue estimates. I want Stephen to have time to crunch the numbers to everyone's satisfaction. That will still give us 60 days, plenty before June 1. I think January 23rd is fine.
No, let's say no later than January 23rd.
No later, yeah.
What's coming back, a
He did
draft
say that.
ordinance or blah, blah, blah?
No later than January.
I have a solution. Anita, can you give us the motion that we need, please?
Okay. It is just simply a motion for staff to draft an ordinance effectuating the salary increases for board members as discussed on this date, and to do so no later than January 23rd of 2023.
What she said.
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion.
I don't know who I'm seconding, but second?
Motion by, I think it was Michael, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. And then the direction to staff,
The direction to staff would be to come back as soon as practically possible with a vehicle for your board to consider enhancing and developing more fully the obligations and functions and duties of board members.
That is the direction I'm looking for, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yes. All right. CAO, do we have everything under control here? Thank you very much for this
no, we don't.
discussion. All right, let's see. We'll move on to 7.3, consideration of memorandum of understanding between County of Lake and Partnership Health Plan of California for the Housing and Homeless Incentive Program for FYs 22-23 through 27-28 in the amount of $4,174,059, and allow the Director of Behavioral Health Services to sign. And it looks like we have Director Metcalf here, if you'd like to have the floor here, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Todd Metcalf, Behavioral Services. I'm sorry, my item probably won't be as interesting as the last one, and I'll try to keep it brief. But as was stated in the board memo, this is a proposed memorandum of understanding between Partnership Health Plan and Lake County Behavioral Services. This is basically a result of the California Department of Healthcare Services housing.
If I can interrupt Todd real quick,
sure.
and Ms. Grant, I still am in transition, so I'm technically still a partnership member. Nobody's booted me off yet. Maybe if I get a raise, I'll get booted off. Is there a conflict of any kind? This is a public generally type of discussion, but if I'm a partnership member, do I need to go bye-bye?
Well, if there is no actual financial conflict with any of this, correct? You don't stand to benefit financially from this discussion?
No.
Okay, so there's no actual discussion. Then the only remaining thing is if you feel that you would be unduly biased or prejudiced in one direction or another, which is a determination that each board member has to make using, your own good conscience. It doesn't sound as if that would be the case here, but that is certainly up to you to determine.
All right, thank you for that. I don't claim any such bias. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Green. As I was saying, this is a result of the California Department of Healthcare Services Housing and Homelessness Incentive Program, which is pretty much designed to guide unhoused individuals into actual independent and permanent living situations and arrangements. The monies will flow through the Housing Continuum of Care, which, as you all know, Behavioral Health Services currently oversees. The real exciting thing about this is that this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, not only focuses on housing and positive health outcomes, but the activities involved in the scope of work of this will support and help what's called the Community Supports Component initiative of CalAIM. CalAIM is another one of those lovely acronyms. It's California Advancing and Innovating Medi-Cal. So the community supports component of CalAIM will create and improve existing service delivery around housing support. And this will help reinforce that and enhance it. I also see with this MOU a potential connection to Care Court, since housing is a part of that initiative as well. And we've talked a little bit about that before already. What I would like to do, and I'm hoping that Scott Abbott, our housing program manager, has zoomed in or dialed in, because what I thought maybe would be useful would just go through the budget allocation that you've seen. It's part of your packet. Because there are a lot of different things that this is designed to do, and I thought maybe he could just walk us through it. And before I forget, I do want to thank Supervisor Spatier for your recent support in the Housing Continuum of Care. You had some input on this, so I just want to make sure I thank you for that. And Scott, I can't see you.
I'm here.
Oh, great. Would you mind just maybe walking us through that budget summary?
Okay, you bet. We did create a budget. We, as in the COC Executive Committee, did create a budget. We'll be getting. I'm sorry. Let me start with. Does everyone have a? Todd, did you say everyone has a copy of that budget?
It's in the board packet. Everyone should have it. I forget what page it's on. You have to dig for it, but it's a line-by-line summary of what these monies will be used for. And I thought it would be helpful for you to understand what you're approving as far as what each of those line items means.
Right. Okay. I could share it, or does everyone have it?
You could share it. I think it would be beneficial if you shared it.
Okay. We'll do that.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes, if you will. Now we can't, but we could earlier.
I don't think that's your doing, Mr. Abbott. Oh, it is. It's on my screen as well. All we see is one vertical line, and it's about 1 inch wide.
Oh, really?
We can see column R.
Nice. Okay, let me try that again.
You need to go to page 1, maybe?
No, this.
Perfect.
There we go.
Right there.
Really, you see it? Okay. Interesting. I just moved on the screen. I didn't do anything else. Anyway, okay. So this is the total allocation that we're receiving. Actually, let me go to a different tab right here just to start with that. So here's the net allocation that we're receiving, which is $3.7 million over 3 years. And this is the year breakdown for each year. As Todd explained, this funding comes from DHCS through Partnership Health Plan, who are charged with working with our COC in determining how this funding is to be used. This particular budget right here is for 3 years, with each year kind of getting a little bit more. You can see that this section right here, partnership takes out funding for the own administration.